Good morning, everyone. We'll continue our book reading this morning, Advanced Selling Strategy by Brian Tracy. We're in chapter 10, Closing the Sales, the End Game of Selling. Yesterday, we looked at showing that your products doesn't cost too much. We looked at the feel, felt, found method. We looked at you get what you pay for method, which is the final approach that will be helpful for your customers to keep coming back to you. Today we are going to look at closing the sales on page 381. Closing the sales. So the fear of failure and rejection surged to the forefront of the mind of the prospect and the sales at the moment of decision. Money and ego are at stake for both. The close or moment of decision is such a traumatic event for both people that it seldom happens. 50% of all sales calls end without the salesperson asking for the order or for some sort of commitment to the next step in the sales. In study after study, it has been shown that 90% of sales take place after the fifth call and the fifth time that the salesperson asks the prospect to make a commitment. The same study shows that most salespeople give up after the first call. Less than 10% of salespeople persist in their efforts with the prospect long enough for a sales to take place. That is why the top 10% of salespeople open 80% of new accounts and earn 80% of all the commissions payable in any industry. We have seen that at the opening of the sales call, the relationship is paramount. It is the most important single factor. It is what gets you to the first base. Every single element of personal and professional preparation must be focused on building trust, developing a friendly relationship where the customer likes you and believes that you're acting in his best interests. This must take place before you can move forward. Throughout the sales process, your main job is to present yourself as a warm, friendly, knowledgeable, competent, and helpful person. Sorry, I'll take that again. In every single element of personal and professional preparation must be focused on building trust and developing a friendly relationship where the customer likes you and believes that you're acting in his best interest. This must take place before you can move forward. Throughout the sales process, your main job is to present yourself as a warm, friendly, knowledgeable, competent, and helpful sales consultant. The bigger the product, the more money involved, the more often it is that the prospect will have to interact with you before he reaches a critical mass psychologically and feel confident enough to proceed with the purchase decision. For the salesperson, the sales process begins with the initial contact, but for the customer, the sales process begins with the buying decision. Up to the point of saying yes, the customer is independent of the salesperson. He can accept or reject his offers, evaluate his proposal, compare his product with competitors, and decide to buy or not to buy. Before buying, the prospect can take you or leave you. The prospect is completely free, but from the moment the prospect signs the sales order and issues a check, he becomes a customer. He is now dependent on the salesperson and his company for the delivery of the product or service and the fulfillment of all his promises. And prospects don't particularly like to be dependent upon other people, especially salespeople. Because of the complexity of modern selling, the sales goes on after the sales. Once you have closed the transaction, it is just the beginning. You must then make sure that the product or service is delivered and paid for, installed and operating, and that the customer is happy and satisfied. You must make regular public relation calls to make sure that the customer remains happy with his decision. In many cases, a sales relationship begins that can continue for years. At the moment of making the final decision, the customer in the position of entering into a business marriage. Up to now, whether he wants to get involved with you for the long term, whereas the relationship was important in the beginning of the sales process to get it started. The relationship becomes critical at the point of deciding whether or not to buy what you're selling. It may seem too harsh, but every refusal to buy is to some degree the customer telling you that he doesn't like or trust you enough. A refusal by a qualified prospect to proceed with your offer is a statement that he does not have sufficient confidence in you or your company to enter into a long-term business relationship. More sales are lost for this reason than you could possibly imagine. Almost every major decision of any kind is stressful. When you ask a prospect to give you a large amount of money and commit to a course of action that may take place over several months or years, the customer cannot help but wonder, am I making a mistake? Is it safe? Some people say that closing is unnecessary. They said that closing techniques are part of an early era of selling and sales training. They say that if you make an excellent presentation, that it is clearly focused on the customer's exact problem or need, the sale will take care of itself. But this is simply not true. The greater the possible consequences of the purchase decision, the more likely it will be that politics, bureaucracy, fear and paralysis will set in as sales process comes to a climax. Even if you have a fabulous relationship with the customer and all the associate decision makers, you must be prepared, like a surgeon, to act with sureness and dexterity at critical moments. You must be prepared to ask for the order. Okay, so this is where we'll stop for our reading this morning, talking about closing the sales. So in summary, you must get the customer to sign or make an order, to make a transaction, or to sign a check. It doesn't just stop there. Where we read last, it said because of the complexity of modern selling, the sales goes on after the sales. That means it doesn't have to stop there where the customer has to like sign the order or make a transaction. You still have to follow up. You have to do regular public relations call. You have to make sure that customer is happy and remains happy with the decision that he or she has made. So at the moment of making that final decision, the customer is in a position of entering into a business marriage, as the book puts it, with you. So you have to continue conducting business with this person. That is courtship. You have to find out how he's doing, for the business relationship to continue. So building a relationship with your customer is very, very important. Like the book has told us so far, building a very, very good rapport with your customer and a good relationship with your customer at the initial stage and also at the end when the customer is closing the sale is very important. So relationship with your client and customer is very, very critical in terms of making decisions to buy, in terms of making decisions to sell, or in terms of making a sales conversation with your customer. So this is just a brief summary of our reading for this morning. Thank you.